So today I am joined by Brendan Bader with Modern Nest. He's been a contractor for over a decade now.
We specialize primarily in either fix and flips or new custom spec homes. And we started out, like you said, 10 years ago, just running around town, putting out fires for the banks, and what a good time that was. But quickly, as the recession started to pick up, you were gracious enough to refer me to a lot of clients and started doing a lot more remodeling. And we found the passion that we had for design and custom building and really kind of catered that more toward the spec home business because we were able to put a lot of our own personal touch on things and really get into our own personal designs, and that's where we are today.
If you were, in my shoes and not a contractor or a designer, and you were getting ready to remodel your own home, what are some of the steps that someone should take when looking for a contractor? Should they work with an interior designer first, because most contractors don't have the in-house design team? What are some recommendations that you have for people?
Starting with an interior designer is not a bad idea. A lot of times people come directly to the contractor. If that contractor does not provide design services, then they're actually skipping a step, and a lot of times the contractor has to tell them, well, I can't really give you any sort of an idea of what this is going to cost or how long it's going to take because I need more information. If you hire a designer separate from your contractor and they don't happen to do design build contracting, then I would definitely recommend that team works tight-knit together. Because when you try to separate the two, we find that there's a lot of miscommunication throughout the actual construction process.
And would it be advantageous to find a designer who has their own contractor and they're vetting the contractor, or finding a contractor who works with the designer?
I would say the important piece of that is that the two work well together. So whether or not you go to a designer first, which again is probably the most natural first step. So that's probably what I would recommend to somebody. If they're just conceptualizing some ideas in their home, that'd probably be your first step. Talk to a designer. And most designers in town, they will have someone that they've worked with before that they'll be able to recommend that they work well with. I would probably interview both before you even decide to work with a design firm. I would probably interview their contractors as well, because you need to make sure that you can carry that team throughout the end of the process. It can be done another way, but we find that there's a lot of miscommunication when that happens.
Would you recommend even working with a designer, say you're doing a small project like a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel, if you don't know what you want going into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest mistake people make is thinking they can put it all together themselves. A lot of times people have great ideas, and most of the time we're in there working through those great ideas with them, but how those things come together is totally different, and that's what a professional is going to do. There's a lot more that goes into it. However many variables you think there's going to be at least double those. Honor the process, have the right people in place, and I also recommend to everybody, if that means limiting your scope of work, a lot of times people try to do like the whole house, but they might not have the funding to be able to put the right pieces in place. So that's why they start skipping out and like doing their own design or hiring someone that's unqualified to do work in order to save on money. I would say focus in on a smaller area, a smaller scope of work, and do it to its fullest degree. I think you're going to have a much better experience in the end.
What does that mean when a contractor has insurance?
Yeah. Well, it's actually a requirement of your licensing. Just like anything else, for your automobile, for your home, for anything else, things can happen. This is a dangerous field. I think that's another thing a lot of people discount a lot of times, is that we're dealing with life safety. There needs to be insurance in place for protection of the homeowner, of the contractor, and subcontractors and vendors, or anyone involved on the job site.
I can speak to a specific example where one of our clients hired a painter, and they painted the entire interior of the home, and including the laundry room, and they pushed the laundry back. The homeowner did a load of laundry that night, and they woke up in the morning and came out of their bedroom, and they actually slipped in water and fell and ended up in the hospital because the painter had forgotten to put the tube from the laundry into the drain, and it flooded the house.
Sure.
Fortunately, that painter had insurance, and it covered all of the medical expenses, and protected both the contractor and took care of the homeowner.
One thing you got to think of when you're thinking of insurance is it's not there to necessarily protect against, you're not protecting against negligence, it's incidental. And we're all human beings, we all make mistakes, and a painter is not necessarily qualified to be installing or uninstalling a washer and dryer. It doesn't know the ins and outs and the complexities of a plumbing system. And so I don't think that they're not required to know that, and they're not expected to. And so those kinds of things can happen. These kind of speak to the overlapping variables that are on a construction site. It's very complex. It's a lot more complex than people even realize or give it credit for. So there are already these mechanisms in place, the ROC, your insurance, to kind of protect from these things that are bound to happen over the course of many, many projects, certain things.
Some jobs require permits, some jobs don't. Some people don't get permits for work. Can you tell me a little bit about what a permit is for, what kind of jobs would require permits, and how you can avoid them from time to time?
Absolutely. Well, I would never recommend avoiding them. Just like insurance or the ROC, they're there to protect you. The thing that people, I think, oftentimes don't realize is that almost everything is supposed to have a permit. Very, very few things aren't. Every city ordinance would have different requirements on this, so they make it actually very easy for people to check into what's required and what's not. There's always a telephone number that can be found easily online that you can call, and they'll be able to tell you if you need a permit. Many of these permits are found online now. You can get them for simple things.
City of Phoenix's website is very easy to navigate for permits.
Exactly. They've made it very, very user-friendly these days. So people can pull permits for simple things just with a few clicks of a button, and they're usually very inexpensive relative to the cost of the construction anyway. So I would definitely recommend embracing them and going through the proper channels. There's gaps in our business. So when you have plumbers, electricians, framers, painters, they all do their own individual things, and a builder is there to make sure that there's communication going between all of them. And even then, you still have incidentals, things like you had said that can come up. And so the permit will assure that someone from the city that's qualified to do so is going to come out and make sure that everything is in compliance with code and with restrictions.
Some jobs require permits, some jobs don't. Some people don't get permits for work. Can you tell me a little bit about what a permit is for, what kind of jobs would require permits, and how you can avoid them from time to time?
Absolutely. Well, I would never recommend avoiding them. Just like insurance or the ROC, they're there to protect you. The thing that people, I think, oftentimes don't realize is that almost everything is supposed to have a permit. Very, very few things aren't. Every city ordinance would have different requirements on this, so they make it actually very easy for people to check into what's required and what's not. There's always a telephone number that can be found easily online that you can call, and they'll be able to tell you if you need a permit. Many of these permits are found online now. You can get them for simple things.
City of Phoenix's website is very easy to navigate for permits.
Exactly. They've made it very, very user-friendly these days, so people can pull permits for simple things just with a few clicks of a button, and they're usually very inexpensive relative to the cost of the construction anyway. So I would definitely recommend embracing them and going through the proper channels. There's gaps in our business. So when you have plumbers, electricians, framers, painters, they all do their own individual things, and a builder is there to make sure that there's communication going between all of them. And even then, you still have incidentals, things like you had said that can come up. And so the permit will assure that someone from the city that's qualified to do so is going to come out and make sure that everything is in compliance with code and with restrictions.
So during a project in a home, who actually oversees and supervises the work that's being done? I've had work done in my own home. I've seen projects happen where you hire a contractor and then it's not actually the contractor that's showing up and doing the manual labor. So explain to me kind of a little bit how that system works.
That's a very common comment. Someone showed up and someone else, I never saw them again until it was time to get the check or whatever they say. Just like any other business, there has to be a hierarchy of management, right? Some general contractors will self-perform work, and that's great. And if you can find someone that does that, then I think that could be a benefit to you. We kind of have a philosophy that we try to train down through management, and then I'm there to oversee to make sure that philosophy is coming through. I think it's okay for a homeowner to hire a contractor that's not going to be able to be there on an all-day, everyday basis. I think it's probably unrealistic to expect that you would find that, but it is important that contractor is available via communication and is checking in and has a proper team in place that is able to carry out their vision.
So is it common then for a contractor to routinely check in with the homeowner while they're going through a project?
Very common, and every contractor probably does it different. Again, back to the vetting process, I would ask these questions. How are you going to be monitoring our job throughout this process? Just making sure that they're willing to commit to dedicating the time and energy to be able to communicate with you in a way that's definitely necessary on these jobs.
Say a contractor comes into my home and is doing work. What sort of things do they do to protect my property from causing damage? You know, say they are remodeling the kitchen and not touching the flooring. You know, what sort of things can contractors do or can people do to protect their home from damage?
It primarily comes down to the quality of the individual that you're hiring. That's why I always recommend hiring a team that you can trust and someone you can trust beyond just the cost of what they're telling you. Is this person going to be honest with you? Are they going to respect your home the way they would respect their home? Because it really comes down mostly to effort, to be honest. It is very difficult to remodel a kitchen with protecting the rest of the house or people living in the homes. We've been through many of these together, and you know, there's kind of an art to it, and it's difficult. And I usually try to tell anyone that I work with that, especially when they're living in the home, it is our honor and our pleasure to try to do everything we can to cover things, to clean up after ourselves, to respect their space, because this is their home, they're living there, and it can become a very frustrating process. That being said, it is a construction site, and so there's nothing you can do to completely seal everything in. So there will, if you're going to get into a renovation, know and understand that that is going to be a variable in the equation, and prepare for it.
Sure.
So if you have the ability or the means to section off a part of the house, live in a part of the house, or set up, if you're doing a kitchen remodel, a lot of times we'll try to use the laundry room or somewhere else where we'll set up a microwave and some other things for just the period of time that we'll be working there, that we can kind of quarantine that area to the best of our ability, and not have the in and out on a regular basis, because it's really the in and out that creates the mess.
Yeah.
And causes
It's
problems.
dirty.
It's really dirty.
For somebody that's a clean freak, it gets dust and dirt everywhere.
Sure.
No matter what you do, you can put up plastic. It
Yep.
gets on. It gets everywhere.
That's exactly right. I mean, the dust is really fine, and it finds its way into everything. And we unfortunately live in a climate here where only a few months of the year can we shut down the AC system and open up the windows. So, you know, we're kind of up against competing forces of nature there, and so it is a difficult process. But I do find that if you vet your contractor up front and you know this person, you can build that relationship with them, they're going to treat your things with respect, just out of the courtesy that you've built out of that relationship. And it's less like a client relationship or someone who's hiring someone to do a service. It's more like they're treating it like their own home.
How does somebody vet a contractor?
It's a tough process, but I would dedicate the time for it. Don't rush into a project. The ROC used to be the only way you could check into somebody, but now we have great ability with the internet to be able to see the track record from other people who have hired contractors. So online is a great resource to do so.
Sites like Yelp, Angie's List,
Sure, absolutely.
House, I
That's
think
right.
does it now.
That's right. That's right. There's many more. And you know, if you are someone who has the ability to hire someone who knows somebody, I think that you're a step ahead, because if you know someone, you can get a personal track record that I think is definitely holds a lot more weight than just what someone can put online.
Would you recommend calling and asking for references on previous jobs?
Absolutely, absolutely. And any contractor who's not hiding from someone should be able to provide you with into the home will have their own individual warranties, which you could ask your builder about to be able to provide for you. So a lot of times builders will be eager to provide you with that information, because that way, obviously, if something goes out, then you can contact them directly. I would recommend that anybody who's working with a builder ask for any documentation on any of the equipment from a mechanical standpoint that's been put in the house, and then workmanship is primarily on the contractor for 2 years after they've done work, and individual subcontractors from there will work with the builder, obviously, on their own warranties.
Okay. So during a project in a home, who actually oversees and supervises the work that's being done? I've had work done in my own home. I've seen projects happen where you hire a contractor and then it's not actually the contractor that's showing up and doing the manual labor. So explain to me kind of a little bit how that system works.
That's a very common comment. Someone showed up and someone else, I never saw them again until it was time to get the check or whatever they say. Just like any other business, there has to be a hierarchy of management, right? Some general contractors will self-perform work, and that's great. And if you can find someone that does that, then I think that could be a benefit to you. We kind of have a philosophy that we try to train down through management, and then I'm there to oversee to make sure that philosophy is coming through. I think it's okay for a homeowner to hire a contractor that's not going to be able to be there on an all-day, everyday basis. I think it's probably unrealistic to expect that you would find that, but it is important that contractor is available via communication and is checking in and has a proper team in place that is able to carry out their vision.
So is it common then for a contractor to routinely check in with the homeowner while they're going through a project?
Very common, and every contractor probably does it different. Again, back to the vetting process, I would ask these questions. How are you going to be monitoring our job throughout this process? Just making sure that they're willing to commit to dedicating the time and energy to be able to communicate with you in a way that's definitely necessary on these jobs.
How accurate are the bids that you get from contractors? Because I often feel when you do a construction project, it always costs twice as much as what you think.
Have a contract that spells it out with detail, so that whatever you're actually getting, you know what you're paying for. So it's not just a general. If you want to remodel a kitchen, it doesn't just say kitchen remodel, X amount of dollars. You'll actually see how much your cabinetry is, how much you're spending on flooring, how much you're spending on lighting, what lights, how many lights, how much money am I allowed to spend on my fixtures in this bid that you have here. Really dig down and get the information up front, because that way in the end, when the contractor brings to you, oh, looks like we do need an extra cabinet here, you can actually talk in an educated manner as why. Why am I getting hit with this cost? But if it just said kitchen remodel, you have no way to know what, there's no benchmark from which to operate from.
I feel like whenever I work with a contractor or a vendor, the timeline that they give me is 2 weeks. We'll be done in 2 weeks. Just give us 2 weeks. And then it always takes like 4 months.
Yeah.
What is with the 2 weeks? Why do all contractors say 2 weeks?
You know, I think their heart is in the right place. You know, just like anything else, when you put it on paper, sure, 2 weeks seems normal. But the minute you swing the first hammer and oops, there's aluminum wiring in this wall. There's not just one thing that stops you. Just one domino falls and the rest of them start to go. Because if you just find aluminum wiring in a wall, then you have to go to the homeowner, educate them on the process for replacing the aluminum wiring or the dangers by leaving it, then deciding a plan on moving forward, adjusting the budget, redesigning everything. It goes through a number of different stages just to get back to where you started. And so that takes a lot of time. And I always tell people also, if you have a 1-day hiccup in your schedule, let's just say someone gets sick and can't come finish the plumbing, but you had an inspection scheduled for the next day. Well, the drywall guy can't start until you get that inspection. The drywall guy might have been scheduled for the next day, but can't necessarily come a day later because he had something else in his schedule. So there's a lot of those variables I'm talking about. They all work together and there's no way to predict them all. So I think a lot of times that adds to time overruns as well as cost overruns. But in general, that's what a builder's job is to do, is to the best of their ability, anticipate those time overruns, those cost overruns, be educating a homeowner that they are possible, that they're not just possible, they're guaranteed to happen over a course of a project. Having a contingency in your budget might be another, not only time-wise, but factoring in the right amount of time and the right amount of money. Again, when you stretch yourself too thin because you're trying to do too much of the house and you don't leave any room for those variables that are guaranteed to come up, then you're really living life on the edge for your remodel project.
I'm often asked when I'm out in the field with clients and we're looking at homes, they're always asking me, what upgrades can I do to my home to get the best return on investment? So you're in a unique position because you're very active in the real estate market. Not everybody has the ability to basically tear down a home and start fresh. So where can people most effectively put their money to get the greatest return on their investment?
Sure. That's a really good question. I would say that there's common answers that I could give you. The kitchen, the master bath, these things are the common things that people will tell you, and I agree with those, absolutely. But one things that people can do that are kind of small that I think add a lot of value is I recommend to people, don't focus on going big, just go quality. So like maybe you pick all the plumbing fixtures or all the light fixtures, or if you're going to be selling your home, make sure that everything is clean and organized and set up properly and stored properly. Relative to what we're talking about, kitchen remodels, it doesn't take a whole lot of money to do. And so I find that those little things, the finishes are probably somewhere that you're gonna get the most bang for your buck in a home if you're about to sell. Now I always tell people also, if you're gonna be living there for a long time, the finishes are the things that will go out of style the fastest as well.
Yeah.
So that's something you want to be careful for, because you go spend a lot of money on finishes and then you go sell your house.
Which is easy to do.
It is, it is, and it adds up quickly. I think that's another thing that people are shocked once they start getting into this process, that your home is an expensive.
Faucets are expensive.
Yes, they are. Light fixtures. Yeah. The finishes are very, very expensive. But I do find that if you limit your scope and focus more on quality and having things done well, organized and clean, people will see that when they walk into a home. They'll see that this was done properly. But if you try to stretch yourself too thin and you cut corners, I think people see that, and that's what really hurts you in the back end in your value.
We're done with the project, everything's finished, it's come out great. What documentation should I expect to receive from my contractor when it's all said and done?
Sure. Well, in general, the documentation that we'll provide to a homeowner is a paid invoice that shows all of the scope of work, of course, with it, again, going back to the contract that's followed us all the way through, with a specific scope of work and outline of what has been done. So if you start with a contract and certain things change, getting updated revisions of what's been done so that you're outlining the scope of work and how much was paid for it is a really important piece. That sounds pretty standard, but I think a lot of people might find themselves at the end of a project saying, well, this is what the contract was, but we did this and this and this and this, and like I never really got any paperwork for it. Well, then you have no real evidence. Keep that contract going all the way through the job and into your invoice, showing that this was the work that was paid for. Because if there is defect and you can't find your contractor for any reason, then you're gonna need to be able to prove that that work was done and paid for and delivered by this individual. So I would say that is the primary thing. Getting all the information, any mechanical components in the house is always really valuable information to have. I think a good thing to have also would be maintenance information. So all the different finishes that we put in the house, every single manufacturer has their own set of guidelines on how to maintain their product. And a lot of times people might make the mistake, and it's difficult for contractors to know all the different cleaning products that every hardwood flooring company wants you to use on their floor, right? And so as a homeowner, to protect yourself, I would actually ask your builder to provide you with any information on maintaining your new floors.
You can't use Windex on everything.
Right, exactly. A good contractor will be thrilled to provide you with that information. If they're hesitant to give you the information, that might be a red flag in itself, because what that does is protects both sides. Because if you're rubbing your mirrors with Windex and you think that contractor sold you a lemon of a mirror because it's rubbing off, well, there might be an explanation for it. You just didn't have the information you needed, and maybe you wouldn't have used that product all those years ago once you were finished, and therefore there's just not that miscommunication years later. It saves time and energy.
So we've covered a lot of really great information. Can you kind of just give me a quick synopsis, kind of a bullet point format on, I want to do a project, I need to hire a contractor. What are the steps that I should take?
Sure. I'm probably not the best person to ask this question, because I'm really big on feel, Danny. I'm big on relationships, right? It's not that you're going to go onto Yelp and build this lifelong relationship with your contractor like 3 minutes after he walks in the door. I realize that it's an unrealistic expectation. But at the same time, I really, really believe in taking the time to be able to get some sort of a feel of the individuals that you're working with. Find a qualified contractor, qualified, licensed, not just someone who says, I've been doing this for a number of years and that makes me qualified. I really do always recommend that someone hire someone who is licensed, bonded, insured. If you are able to hire someone that someone else knows, I think that you're ahead of the game. If you cannot, there's lots of resources available. Look into those resources, use those resources. Interview many contractors, because many times in interviewing subcontractors and where you feel like you've got the right person in place right from the beginning does not turn out to be the case after you've vetted out that process, because other people will bring a perspective that even if you end up hiring that first person, the perspective that you'll get from the others about that first person will allow you to actually live more secure in the fact that you hired them as well. So it's not just that you're going to find someone else in the third contractor, it's that you might cement the idea that this is the person for you. I would recommend definitely taking the time to vet out multiple contractors, always being qualified, and then spending the time to get educated from that builder on the process and what's going into your specific job, having a contract that outlines all the details of what you're getting and how much it's costing. Asking your contractor up front, how do you handle change orders? Because there has to be a clear and defined process on how they're going to bring to you any changes and how much that's going to cost. And then allowing yourself the time and the budget to do it properly. Always budgeting in a little extra for contingency, and not just money, but also in the form of time. And then trying to allow your contractor to do their work. So trying to get yourself out of the space, moving your things around, accommodating the contractor so that you're not having to live in and around them, because it is a really difficult job that we're up against as builders to operate in people's homes. Throughout the process, be asking them questions, being informed and constantly checking in, getting the right documentation after the fact to show what has been done, for how much money it was done, and what do I need to do moving forward with what has been done, are all things that I think would help someone go into a construction project armed and ready to do the battle. If you guys want to look us up, the name of our company is Modern Nest. Again, we've stopped doing renovations or building for hire. We're now selling homes. We've got 4 projects going right now, so you can check us out on Instagram and follow those. And if anyone's interested in potentially buying one, they can contact us there. Everything's online.
This has been another episode of Ask a Contractor. I'm Danny Brown with Myriad at My Home Group. Thanks for watching.